Now, the vegan, or I want to say the plant-based lifestyle that y'all done adapted, that y'all been doing now for over 50 years. Can you explain to my viewers the importance of it and the biblical aspect of it?
Sure. And everything that we do in one form or another is divinely inspired, whether it's through scripture from the Tanakh, Torah, or from divine revelation. And we not just limited in terms of what canonical writings and what have you, but anywhere we find truth, and again, truth's something that's got to make sense. And so when we look at the biblical record, the Creator felt so much that our dietary guidelines were so important that in the first book and the first chapter of the first book, that He gave us our parameters for our diet. He told us what to eat. Now, if you buy a new automobile, it's going to have in the glove compartment a manual. It's going to tell you, this is the kind of fuel you put in there. And there's all different types of fuel options for vehicles. And you might make a mistake and put diesel in a petrol engine or vice versa, and it'll run for a little bit. It might run for a long time, but it's not going to perform at its optimal. So in the first chapter, 29th verse, I've given you every green herb bearing seed, and it shall be to you for your food. So it was a plant-based diet. Yes, Moses later gave us, you can eat this animal, don't eat that animal, don't touch that animal. Eat this fish, don't eat that seafood. You can eat this bird, don't eat that kind of bird, etc. Did we follow those laws? No, we didn't follow those laws. We've eaten all manner of scavenger and seafood, that are basically scavengers of the ocean. And we are what we eat now. And they're eating the feces, literally, that are falling on the bottom of the sea from other species. There were reasons why Moses gave us the difference between the clean and the unclean species. But all in all, you got to consider that Moses had given us a diet that was fit for a people who had fallen, because from Genesis, the 3rd chapter, we're in fall, we're in decline. We have fallen from that pristine original dietary arrangement. Yeah. And so for us, it was a matter of getting back to the original. We made a full circle. We got all the way back here to the land, and we said, hey, we got a new slate now. We can get a new start here. And so we wanted to make sure we got off on the right foot. And so we went back to the beginning. We're in a garden, eastward in Eden, and we're a new Adam and a new Eve now, and with a chance to replenish and do it right. So for us, veganism was a no-brainer. It was clear that the diet of our ancestors, that which they were given, the entrails of the animals, and they call it, I think in certain French companies, they call it offal. They spell it O-F-F-A-L, but it was awful. A-W-F-U-L, But to think, I remember when my grandmother cooked chitlins in the house.
Yeah.
I was like, my God, what you? And I would say, what's going on? And you're actually getting ready to eat something that smells like that?
Yeah.
Your nose is your very first sense of protection. It's before the food gets to your mouth, you smell it, and it's supposed to smell tasty. It's supposed to smell appealing. You can't tell me that you go in any meat section of a supermarket. You tell me that that's a pleasant smell, and you mask that with sauces and gravies and spices and what have you, and act like it wasn't degenerating, act like it wasn't, that's a nice way to say, rotting. And the moment you kill an animal, first of all, you can't get all the blood out of an animal. you're not getting ready to get all the blood out of that tissue.
Yeah.
So the idea of koshering is not, what we might think it to be.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to stop the degenerative process by refrigerating or even freezing. The moment you take it out to thaw it out, that process continues. You only slow it down with the refrigerating process. And so, it just made sense to us that why, and then you look at the biology of it. The biological intelligent design of our systems. The fact that we can eat flesh and survive is a testimony to the durability of the human species. But again, that doesn't mean that was the optimal diet for it.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It wasn't the best fuel for us.
Yeah.
It was the plants. So why go to the middleman? Why eat the middleman? Why not go straight to the source?
Exactly.
We don't have the teeth that are designed to catch prey, that the fangs, and we don't have claws. We don't have the short intestines that allow the rotting flesh to pass through very quickly. So it stays in the system, and we're constipated, and it rots, and it causes cancerous ulcers in our system. I can go on and on. We don't even have the enzymes that allow us to digest milk, animal proteins, much less animal flesh. So it's without question that we are designed as plant-based consumers.
It makes sense. It reminds me of Daniel. And he was like, yo,
put me to the test,
yeah.
man. Put me to the test. Because the guard had an interest in keeping Daniel healthy.
Yeah.
He said 10 days, man. Just 10 days, see what you see. So the Daniel test, man. Daniel knew.
And y'all have a sister. I was honored to meet her. She's 104. In the community. 104.
I think she's 103.
103.
Yeah.
Oh.
And he did. Well, her next birthday is 104.
Yeah. She's in
her 104th year. Yeah.
No, that's excellent.
Yeah. And alert.
Yeah.
Alert.
Yeah. And that's man, that's all praises to the Creator. All praise to the Most High. So now let me ask you this. I want to talk about the other branches and communities that y'all have set up in Africa.
Yeah.
Okay. So just touch on some of the different communities that just give the viewers certain locations where the other communities is at around Africa that y'all have.
I think our most densely concentrated area or jurisdiction, as we call them, is Ghana. Ghana we consider to be the gateway. And it's no accident. We've been in Ghana now for 45 years approximately.
Wow.
And Ghana became the gateway, literally, so as the, proclaiming the year of return. And Ghana leading the way for many African nations, for those of the diaspora that want to return. And other nations have taken note. In 2019 alone, I think African Americans brought $3 billion worth of resources into Ghana just from visiting. So what African nation couldn't use that or wouldn't want to cater to that? And then what we bring to the table relative to our experience in a Western civilization, in a Western setting, and those who have tasted the best and want to escape that and get back to our roots and be amongst our people. There's that's a marriage that we say is made in heaven, and indeed Ghana has been a great source of welcoming for us in that regard. We've had long history of working together, governmental level, private individuals, the people. It's home, West Africa. That's not always for those who identify as Israelites. Naturally, this would be the home base, but things being the way that they are, that's a way station. It's an option, rather than to pine away in the land of the captivity. Why not embark on other areas of the Edenic lands where you would be welcome, where you could sustain yourself, where your resources, be they dollar resources or your intelligence and what you bring in the way of experience, would go a lot further than where you are currently. So for us, Ghana has been that. It has been that way station, or not way station, but that gateway into the Edenic lands. We're also in Benin, Togo, Liberia. After our first experience in Liberia, we cleared out after a while during the Civil War. That was a challenging experience, to say the least. But we have since returned, and we have a presence there. It's small but growing again. Liberia was decimated by the Civil War, but we have brothers and sisters there, indigenous brothers and sisters there, who held on strong and reached back out and found their way back into the fold.
Wow.
And now have established communities there.
Wow.
We're in Kenya. We're in Kenya with the restaurant there.
Very good restaurant, by the way.
All right. The restaurant with organic agriculture, where we have training center. We've got numerous families that are relocating now as part of get the exact name of the entity, but we're there on the ground teaching these fundamental redemptive lifestyle principles, and it's interesting because the president recently he came to a meeting of our prince, who's over what we call the African Hebrew Development Agency, and the first thing he brought up, the first thing he raised, was his interest in wanting to transform his health sector from curative to preventive. And we were like, what? Because that's precisely what we are masters of. And we did that exact thing for 3 years in consultation with the government of Ghana, 2007 to 2010, where we actually assisted the Minister of Health of Ghana to help transform his health sector from curative to preventive.
Wow.
We're experts in that area.
Can I get a receipt? A recipe? Can I get a?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's the beauty of what we do. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is our life. This is a choice we've made. We're not just advocates for, well, you really, science say you really should do this or you should do that. You'd be better. We've actually gone the next step and put it into practice as a community. So Meharry Medical School and Vanderbilt University Medical School sent a team here back in '94. They did random blood pressure tests and random cholesterol tests, or did a cholesterol test. And they found out that in comparison to the African in America, the findings here were off the charts low. So it means that when you have this kind of lifestyle, and the lifestyle is broad. It's not just the veganism. It's the no smoking. It's the no hard alcohol. It's exercise built into the lifestyle. It's the wearing of natural fabrics. It's massage, a full body massage once a month. It's mandatory. It's no sugar days. It's no sugar weeks. It's no salt days. It's all of these different. It's live food or raw food weeks, and days and meals that are part of our dietary regimen. All those things holistically contribute to longevity and a lack of ailments, lack of illness. So we know that this is something that we are able to share. So Kenya is one of those hot bright spots for us, as is South Africa. And I'm blessed that I rose in love with the brothers and sisters in South Africa in 2001 when I got there. And their struggles parallel ours, albeit theirs are 40 years behind what we experienced in America. But the same principles and tactics are being applied against them. So now, South Africa has gone through the 25 years of political independence. Just like we got the right to vote, we could integrate into the system. And you look up later and you say, man, we made a bad deal. And so we're able to let them know, hey, freedom is not a car and a house and ability to live in a white neighborhood. You know, that's not true freedom. But they resonate with this idea. And many of them in the Bantu communities, many of them actually literally in their narratives, oral narratives, migration patterns, they claim ancestry back to Northeast Africa.
Wow. Interesting. Very interesting. So y'all got different communities set up throughout, Africa, West Africa, East, South. Interesting. So let me ask you this. Northeast Africa. Explain to the people how Israel is in Northeast Africa. I'm trying to drive this home, to the viewers. Israel is in Northeast Africa. Can you explain that to them?
Well, I mean, have you folks grab a map. Let's start with a map,
Yeah.
But there's no question that Israel is landlocked to the rest of the African continent. It is part of the African tectonic plate. The state of Israel sits on the African tectonic plate. And that's not in dispute by scientists. Geologists accept that. Not too far, and I'll share with you, I'll have with me in the morning, and I'll share with you, and you can get pictures of it. Okay. The actual information plates and signs that Israel has that demonstrate that. They're all in Hebrew, but you'll be able to make it out and see what they're talking about. So they won't dispute this fact. But I think it testifies to a spiritual blindness that we all were up under at one point. Because remember, we only discovered that Egypt was a part of Africa about 40 or 50 years ago. Who knew that Egypt was in Africa? You look right there on the map, and there it is, in Northeast Africa. So why can't we seem to cross over the Suez Canal and reclaim that culture as well? But everybody was conditioned, deeply impressed with the idea that those biblical characters were white people. And so that's still there. And in our consciousness, as we awaken into a higher consciousness, the initial tendency is to say that the Bible, knowing how it was indeed used against us, the tendency is then to quickly label it a white man's book and then throw the baby out with the bathwater and get rid of the Bible. When for us, we're saying that no, the Bible is not only is it an African text, but it is the African text that speaks to our current condition and how to get out of it. We're not denying the validity of the 42 negative confessions of Mahat, and we're not even going to be naive enough to say that there's some connection that could be made from the 10 Commandments. Although negative confessions and I shall versus I shall not. I mean, what society would not have codified law, codified conduct? Especially a society that was trying to come out of degradation. And so those things are not important for us. It's the people who would say, y'all don't go back far enough. Is that the issue? Is it that we have to keep going back? Because I assure you, there's some places that were older than Egypt. Is that the objective? It can't be, because if the creation is eternal and that's our position, then we would always be finding something older. That's not it. We've been given a 6,000 year parameter right now in which to extract what we need going forward. We need to go forward. We can't keep going back and digging up old bones and dust. One of our elders used to kick the dust. He would always remind us, but boy, you see that right there? That he kicked the dust. He said, you know what this is? He said, that's the souls of men. And literally that's what it is. That's what the soil is. If we understand that there's been a continual coming of human form on this planet. So we're at this dispensation. But yeah, we're all over the continent, and we know that this idea has to spread.
Definitely. So just 3 more questions. All right. So now.
And roll.
Do you think it's a diabolical plot, to suppress the information or the message that's coming from Dimona? Do you think it's a diabolical plot? Why, or why not?
Because this idea ultimately spells the end of their world, their civilization. We're talking about a radical change. We're not talking about compromising with what are evil economic ideas and evil agricultural practices and evil dietary ideals and acceptable manufacturing, poisons that you can be an allowable amount of poison that a person can consume. No, we are radically saying that there need to be changes in how we go about our day-to-day lives, and that is a threat to manufacturers. It's a threat. Do you realize that every Passover here, that there will be a special little yellow ribbon that is put around packages of cigarettes that say kosher for Passover, and they allow these to be sold kosher for Passover.
Kosher cigarettes?
Kosher cigarettes for Passover. But a righteous system, any righteous government charged with the health and well-being of its people would outlaw the manufacture of cigarettes, period. But because of taxes, and they call it sin tax and what have you, because of taxes and profit motives, these things, free enterprise, and all that sounds good. But that is the epitome of good and evil. And we can't compromise with that. And so going forward, we know that if this idea continues to grow, more people died of the effects of smoking cigarettes in Israel in 1 year than in the entire COVID period in Israel. But why such a huge response on the part of the public health apparatus? So when you put cigarette manufacturers out of business and you outlaw obvious food choices that people can have, when you do that, then we'll know that you're serious about public health. Prior to that, don't come to us talking about sticking any needles in our arms.
Yeah, I really, just being here for 2 weeks, I really think Israel smoked the most cigarettes.
No, they are. Per capita, they are one of the, if not the leading nation in terms of per capita tobacco consumption.
Wow. That's and they supposed to be the people.
The chosen.
They supposed to be the chosen.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that whole concept of chosen, they have interpreted it in the typically Eurocentric idea that the chosen elevates you in terms of being better than other people. When the choice is that you had the choice, that you were elevated in terms of the obligation you had to teach the right way. Quite a different concept. Quite two different concepts of chosen.
Interesting, man. Interesting. So now this question right here. So because I want people to visit Dimona. I want people to visit. How many visitors do y'all have that come like per month? Like, explain to the people that it's not this is not something, a ghost town. This is not, like.
We're 5-minute walk from the police station. 5 minutes. In fact, the bus stops right outside the village, gate. We got a 5-minute walk in the morning to be down to a direct bus to Jerusalem. And there are trains that run to and fro. But no, in fact, you met a brother that just came in yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
And your times will overlap. You know, he's coming out of Atlanta, and you coming from Kenya, and it's like that. They're coming and going, just like it was written that ascending and Jacob going up and down Jacob's ladder. We coming from heaven, going down to the pits of hell for a heavenly cause. So we know that, as it's written, that in these the latter days that the God of heaven has set up a kingdom. We know that Isaiah said that in the last days that Jerusalem would be reestablished as that spiritual center. Many nations said they would go up and be taught the ways of the God of Jacob. and we would learn his ways, and we would walk in his paths. You know, so the walk is the important part. Just don't come here and be enlightened and have your eyes open and say, wow, this is really nice. You know, and then you go back and be who you were. You know, you have to take some of these back with you. And all beginnings are hard and all beginnings are small. But we get hundreds and hundreds of visitors over the course of a year. Some that just passing through for a few hours or a couple of hours, and some that may stay 3 months and possibly 6 months. You know, but our doors are open, and we want to facilitate that process of that learning.
Wow.
And so it's more or less a spiritual contract with us, and we'll do the best we can to accommodate that.
Nice. This is the last question right here. I want you to express your opinion on this. Tell me, like, or just tell me, how do you feel about it? You know, tell me why the children had to go and listen to the Israeli army, and how do you feel about how not just you, but how do the parents of the community in Dimona feel about that?
That's an excellent question, Brother Palal. As a father of many, and as the father of a son now who's 19 and who's in the IDF, and who himself, he's my last born, and he himself went through a very trying time of warring whether he would go in or not, and I didn't want to press him about his going into the army. I talked to him and let him know, hey, there's consequences for all decisions we make in life. But the reality is that when we obtained our status, and again, that allowed us that freedom to dig and create these institutions that have to be what the people see and feel and learn from, that we made a choice, a conscious choice, that we would have no problem in serving in the IDF. Everyone in the land is obligated to do that. And in doing so, it was a demonstration on our part, first of all, that we would defend our land, that in the eyes of the Holy One of Israel, that we would defend this land. I go all the way back to 1990, during the Gulf War crisis, when Saddam Hussein decided he was going to shoot Scud missiles into Israel. Well, how do you think we felt about that? We're here in this land. He's shooting missiles over here, and half the people that live in this area are Arabs. What kind of concern did he have for the Arabs? Those missiles weren't that accurate, you know. So we didn't like that. And if we had the opportunity, we'd have, hey man, we would have, man, you can't do that. We would have lifted up. We would have raised up arms to defend ourselves in such a situation. And then when you look at the fact that so many of our brothers and sisters have joined the U.S. Armed Services and found themselves in Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan and don't know what the hell they're there for. To this day don't know why they were there. And some of them do know why they were there and know it had nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction, that the real weapons of mass destruction are Coca-Cola and McDonald's and those who really are at the door of nuclear, holocaust right now. So we don't have any problem with anyone questioning our service in the IDF. It's a good question, but be careful now, because aren't you serving in Afghanistan, and aren't U.S. forces in Niger right now? You set up a big drone base there. Well, CENTCOM, U.S. Africa Command in Africa, fighting for what? For who? So we have to be careful about throwing stones, about these things. We know that the IDF, it protects us. We would not be spared should all the Arabs decide that they want to start shooting missiles into Israel. And so that's a reality. We wouldn't take too kindly to that. Now, do we look upon the oppression of people? Do we look upon the abuse of people by military means or what have you. No, it's a sad situation, but it's a reality in 2023. You'd have to understand the security of this region and know that certain people's hands are tied. They don't have too many choices given the conditions and given the history of what caused this mess. But peacemakers, are here. And the question is relative to whether they will allow the peacemakers and when they will allow the peacemakers actually to have a seat at the table. So I've actually written a piece that talks about the Palestinian-Israeli narrative and the conflict from an African-centered point of view and a truth-centered point of view. That when you realize there's a third narrative in this land, there's the Jewish narrative and there's the Arab narrative. And we're saying, hey, hold on, slow down. There's another narrative here, and that's ours. That's the African narrative, that we have a stake in this land as well, and you need to hear what our positions are. And a lot of people will sit back and realize that, wow, those are some pretty good, receipts they dropping, in terms of their stake in this fight, in this war, in this conflict, in this region. So the whole decision to join the IDF was one we agonized with, and one that we ultimately decided, yes, we're going to do it. But I think my son, this is interesting, I think my son might have been the harbinger, because he was actually warring with the idea of being a conscientious objector, because he knows, hey, this ain't the life this ain't how I was taught.
Yeah.
And I remember I had another son who joined wanted to join the what's called McGov, the border police. And one day he came home and he said, yeah, I want to join that because I want to take out some Arabs. I said, hold, son, sit down. Where did you learn that from? You ain't never heard me talk about the Arabs in that manner. 95% of the people that live in this land, all they want is peace. All they want is a nice home, able to feed their family, go to work, have a peaceful existence. But it's the extremists on both ends of the conflict that won't allow the other 95% to live in that peace. So they're the problems. But in the meantime, until we break down this religiosity and those, again, these paradigms of evil that exist and that have formed and fashioned this construct called the Middle East, here, this mess here, until that dissipates, it's not going to happen overnight. So we have some realities we have to deal with. And we might get to the point where we say, oh, okay, we're no longer serving.
Yeah. As
a statement. And withdraw. We'll take it as it presents itself.
So most of the children, they don't go into like the combat department of the military. They go.
Vast majority of them did not go. They're free to choose whatever area they want to go in. I've had two sons in the Air Force. I've had one son of all my children. Two ever brought weapons home, and one of those was in a combat unit. He was in an elite unit, and he's finished with it, finished his service, and but there are benefits to certain things. There's a camaraderie. There's a sense of it's a rite of passage for many children. And I say children, even though, they're young adults in the world, but frankly, in this world, to put a gun in the hands of a child, again, I didn't have any say-so. When he chose that, I had to roll with that. That was what he chose. But to put a gun in the hands of a child whose prefrontal lobes haven't fully developed, that ain't even fair. That's fair. That's not fair to ask them to be able to make those kind of life and death decisions when on the front line and having to determine if it's me or him, that survives in the streets of Jenin or other. And so we're not we're not we're peaceful, but we're not pacifists. And so there's a reality here, and we long for the day when everybody gonna put down those guns, you know. But we also think it has a value that people know that we're not a pushover.
Yeah.
We're not ready. We're not just some. We're not just some monks sitting up in here,
So, like you
and,
said,
and there's a strategy, and there's some principles that you learn as being part of an army. And one of the first things that we teach our sons and daughters is that, hey, now that you're in that army, now you realize that you were always in an army. The discipline that they were raised in this community, they realized that, wow, you're part of that army. We are the sons of light. We're the forces for, we're Yahweh Sevaot, the God of forces, the God of armies. Well, we're those armies.
Yeah.
You are my battle axe and weapon of war.
Yeah.
So we are that. And he uses us in these conflicts. But we don't need M16s and tanks and F-16s. But unfortunately, bro, when it says that they will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, that ain't a reference for us. Or should I say, that is a reference for us. That's speaking of us. And it's speaking of the fact that you and I, we're not going to bring our religious doctrines, and you a Baptist, and you a Methodist, and you Christian, and you Israelite, and you this, and what have you, and we beat each other up with our different doctrines. That's certainly not applicable to thinking that they're going to take an F-16 or an F-35 and make a crop duster out of it, or make an M60 tank into a tractor.
Yeah.
That ain't what it's talking about. They're going to use those weapons, and they're going to be used on one another. And that's going to be part of the ultimate plan of starting things all over again. Some of the prophets very accurately, Zechariah very accurately describes nuclear war.
Yeah, definitely. So if it comes down to it, y'all will withdraw, from it if it has to.
Yeah, sure. Just as we made a decision to go in, we make a decision to come out.
Right on.
And we'll let them know that. Our yea is yea and nay is nay.
Yeah.
And we have no problem with that.
Right on. Well, Sar Ahmadiel, it was a wonderful, interview, and I appreciate you, conducting this with me. And man, I hope we can do more work together to really just quantify this unity within, African Hebrew Israelites that's in America. Oh, one question that I do want to ask before why should the diaspora move back to Africa? Why should they?
Africa is the future. It's not just the future for our people in the diaspora, it's the future for the planet. And if they want to have a future, Africa's been preserved. Africa is the ark of this dispensation of time. But honestly, we don't want all diasporans to move back. Yah forbid. If they come back in droves and bring with them the current mindset and lifestyles that they have grown accustomed to and would proliferate in the Edenic lands, in Africa, we would be having to look for another place to go. It's that simple. The plane ride don't change people. There has to be a transformation of thinking and culture and mentality and lifestyle that accompanies the awakening. Other than that, what do we mean by awakening? We're not awakening. We're still living a nightmare. So the coming out process, it was fundamental. It was fundamental in the days of Abraham. Abraham was called out. It was fundamental in the days of Moses. Moses was called out. It's fundamental in the days of the angel that came and said that Babylon has fallen. And he goes on and says, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her plagues and her sins, for her sins have reached unto heaven. And so you look every day, and it said it became a place of every foul and evil and hateful spirit and hateful bird. The demons that exist in America, the stories are proliferating. And you might, sure, you're going to find lots of people, good people. I go over there all the time, and I'm like, wow, these are really nice people, you know. But when the little children grow up, what are they going to be in such a hellish environment? They're going to be demons. They're just. You don't think there were little children in the days of Noah? That there were not nice little elderly ladies in the days of Noah? Sure there were, you know. But they had to be a new beginning. Had to be a new beginning. I guess divine collateral damage. But everybody, you know, don't get the call. People hear it and reject the call. But nevertheless, we're at that stage again. And just as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. So we've got to come out. That is the plan. That separation is part of the divine plan. Other than that, they teach about rotten apples, one rotten apple. So you gotta separate. You gotta isolate yourself. Come out from our people. So on behalf of the community, Brother Palal, we thank you for your presence. We thank you for your courage to come up to make a first-hand investigation. And we've got nothing to hide. You know, we're straightforward. Our lives are open books here, and we only ask that you come and be honest with yourself. You know, to give us our mark, as we say. And if our mark is a 70, well, hey, you know, consider where we came from. You know what I'm saying?
I give y'all more than a 70.
Hey.
So Sarai, she gave me an 85 with the Hebrew. But man, nah, it's a blessing, man. We live in Dimona, you know. Hey, let's unite. You know,
yeah.
let's do this. So,
yeah. But hallelujah, and brothers and sisters, we look forward to your presence here. Make the investment to come and see for yourself.
Definitely. It's worth
it. Right.
It's worth it.
I can't express it too
Come
much.
home.
Come on home. Come on in. The water's fine. Hallelujah.
Shalom.